I'm Chris Douridas with KCRW, and we are here live from Apogee. Very pleased to welcome back to KCRW, Corinne Bailey Rae.
Thank you.
It's so good to see you. It's my first time meeting you, although you've been to KCRW, I don't know, half a dozen times over the years.
I really have. I love KCRW, and when we finally got digital radio in the UK, I was so happy that we could put it on and listen to our book shows and listen to our Morning Becomes Eclectic and all the things that are really familiar to us from being in Los Angeles. And also, you know, when we lived here, we once came here to work on a record. We were meant to be here for 7 weeks and we stayed for 7 months. So we really got used to, you know, driving in our open top car and listening to KCRW, and it's great that we can have that in the UK as well. But the station has given me a lot of support, so I'm really grateful.
Oh, no, it's been our honor. I mean, we followed you from the very beginning. You made such an astounding arrival in 2006 with this debut album that you put out with all this radio-ready, buttery, beautiful tracks that we were just all over it. Yeah.
Well, thanks for that support.
Absolutely. It's so crazy where inspiration comes from. And you could have never predicted from that first album how your career would take you on this incredible journey from album to the album that we have today. The second album, deeply dealing with intense grief. The third album you mentioned a minute ago, being in Los Angeles and being inspired by Kamasi Washington and Thundercat and the sort of LA jazz scene.
Yeah, I mean, being here was a real pleasure. We got to meet some amazing people. And Moses Sumney was playing here and recording here at the time. And of course, our very dear friends from King. We got to know them more deeply and spend more time with them. So, LA was really special to us at that time. And we're lucky that we're able to invite some of our very favorite musicians. James Gadson played on the record, who's a fantastic drummer who's played with many people, including and especially Bill Withers. So just the fact that we could call on James Gadson, that we could call on Marcus Miller, you know, was really wild to me.
Incredible.
Like, that doesn't happen in Leeds. Those people don't live there. So, I mean, I remember having a reception party and, you know, Herbie Hancock was there. And I just sort of thought, I can't believe this is real. You know, these are people that play music that I love, that sort of know me and I guess are giving me this support. You know, it's amazing. And to get to play with Herbie over the years and have that encouragement, you know, it's really from the geographical remove of England to sort of dip in and out of this world. It almost feels like stepping into a dream world and then stepping back out again. And so it's quite the ride. Yeah.
I mean, it is kind of crazy how many people live here that are, you know, movers and
Stevie Wonder.
Yeah.
Just around.
Just around the corner, yeah. Well, it was, I guess, your tour of the third album that took you through Chicago. And I guess happenstance led you to your next inspiration?
I had seen this building on a friend's Pinterest board. In fact, I had seen this photograph of an artist on my friend's Pinterest board. And she has this board about artists and their creative spaces. So she has Kara Walker lining up her silhouettes. She has Picasso painting with light in his studio. And I saw this photograph of this man, this black man, staring into the camera with this kind of stillness and ease. And he was standing next to his art, and his art was weird. And I didn't really understand it. It was a pile of bricks here. It was a goat on these spindly legs going round on a circular track. It was a picture of Harold's Chicken Shop, you know, the sign that goes over Harold's Chicken Shop, and it was someone chasing someone with a meat cleaver. And I thought, who is this? What is this artist? And I found out he was represented by White Cube. I found out he was called Theaster Gates. And I found out about the Stony Island Arts Bank, which is this 100-year-old historic bank on the south side of Chicago, which was going to be torn down by the city. It was out of use. It was in disrepair. The south side is a challenged, you know, underserved community. I think that's the latest term for, you know, our poorest areas that have had no investment and people struggle in all the ways possible. I found out about this building and found out that it was full not with money like when it was a bank, but it was full of art. So it's full of all these art archives. It was full of all the books that had ever been given to the Johnson Publishing Company, who did Ebony Magazine, Jet Magazine. So 26,000 books in kind of black history, art, politics, dance, music, architecture, recipe books, entertainment, everything. And it also contained these problematic objects from America's past, sort of knickknacks, mammy jars, newspaper articles dating all the way back to the 1800s. Postcards, photographs, all of these objects, 40,000 objects, are being collected by this black and Chinese banker called Ed Williams. It also has all of Frankie Knuckles' records. It also has all the glass slides from the University of Chicago when they were digitizing their archives. So, if you used to need to do a talk about ancient Egypt, you would get these slides out and they would have, all the different buildings and monuments. But now, this is before PowerPoint and all of that. So there's, thousands and thousands of all these objects as well. So when we were touring in Chicago, I got a chance to see the building. They asked to show me around. And it was just amazing to me seeing this double-height library with these 26,000 books and opening books, seeing photographs, pulling open drawers, finding objects, historic objects, ephemera, things that might have been thrown away in 1852, but for some reason someone saved the newspaper, and then you can really see and feel and touch and smell and experience what was contemporary, what was in that moment. And I found these objects were sort of fizzing with life and history. I saw this sculpture that had been made out of wooden floorboards, and I found out they were the floorboards from an abandoned police station. And straight away I just sort of thought of the story that they could tell and how objects really hold history. They're the witnesses to history. If they could speak to us, they would be able to tell us everything. They were there, these old historic houses. And so when I left, all I could do was think about these objects and things, and I started writing stories, and I started writing poems and songs, and I knew I had to go back, and I went back many, many times, for a 2-week residency, and then just multiple times over the months and years, kind of, I guess, making music in response to these objects and things that were happening in the bank.
So as that music was taking shape, it took you down musical avenues that you hadn't explored in a while.
Absolutely. I felt like the reaction to the objects happened really quickly, and it happened in my body. And so I didn't really, musically, they just came out in whatever way they came out. So, when I was looking at the difficult and the problematic objects, that came out in a kind of raw, uncontrolled musical stream, which was, my electric guitar, just one string, with mad distortion on. And then there were other songs which were much, much more expansive and elegiac, and there was a piano and there was stillness, and then there were other things that were kind of squelchy and funky and thinking about the future and the past, or there were more cosmic things where thinking about, how much can we affect the past by our actions, how much are we connected to our ancestors, how much they know about what we're doing. So the musical styles, they came second to the responses to the music, and I thought it was a side project when I was making it.
Oh.
So I didn't think it was my album at all, and that gave me a massive amount of freedom. I thought, I don't have to make it for people who might like a star or put your records on. I just thought I can just make this as this sort of intentionally free and weird thing. And I felt really good doing that.
What a great way to be embarking on that, right? Because you're unbridled.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
One of the things that I didn't realize was that you actually had a rock band, a punk band, when you were 15 years old.
Yeah, that was my first sort of music making out thing. I played the violin when I was a kid, and then my sister started playing guitar, and it was around the same time that Nirvana were becoming really big, and that just seemed much more fun, than the violin. And I'd started to find the violin really difficult. I found sight reading hard, but the guitar, I loved it, and you could find all these shapes, or we could watch the MTV Unplugged session. Someone had taped it, so you could watch it over and over and watch Kurt Cobain's hands and think, oh, that's just, if you have this shape, you could just move it here, and you can move it down and up, and you can make a whole song. And I had 2 really good girlfriends and my boyfriend at the time, and I mean, everyone we knew was in a band, so it didn't feel a big special thing to make a band, and it was very big in the UK. Every pub, of which there are many, would have bands nights on, so we were always busy as 15 and 16-year-olds, you know, playing in these local pubs, and the band was called Helen, and yeah, I just absolutely loved it. I think it was just, it seemed like a really, I don't want to offend anyone who's called Helen, that's the trouble, but it seemed very sort of normal name, and I liked the normalness of the name, you know. I thought it just, I don't know, made sense at the time.
I mean, the violin is not that far off from the guitar, right?
Yeah, it's not far off, and I felt like all my musical training kind of happened in orchestras. I loved working with my violin teacher. She didn't play the piano, so when I learnt the songs with her, especially as I couldn't really read music that well, you know, she'd say, do you want to play this? And I'd say, yeah, can you play it first? And then I'll sort of catch up. So I didn't read easily. But, you know, she would go through these twists and turns of the music and all these chromatic bits and all these accidentals. And I think, this is really weird. But then when we got in the orchestra, I finally got to hear the harmonic context and hear, oh, that's why it turns here. Or that's why there's this break. Or that's why it... And I felt it to be a way of kind of finding my place. Like, I had this very small role in the orchestra, or, you know, what the violins did. But then you suddenly got to hear the cellos, you got to hear the tubas, you got to hear the oboes, and to feel like there was this big group. It was always kids, you know, this big group of kids making this sound. I got really into that, you know, arranging and the mystery of the orchestra and what it could do.
Well, the band, Helen, that you speak of, actually did so well. You were offered a record deal at Roadrunner Records.
Yeah, that's right.
Like legit rock label.
A legit rock label. We were going to be their first kind of indie signing, you know, so it would... But our bass player at the time, who is a very dear friend of mine, she got pregnant when I think she was 19, and we were just kind of naive, you know, punk feminists. We're like, that's amazing, she's pregnant, it's gonna look, you know, she'll be able to be on the stage with a massive bump, and she'll just sling a guitar low. But yeah, the phone sort of stopped ringing around that time when we shared that information. So that was my first kind of taste of, like, oh, I imagine like music to be this massive free vehicle that smashes down walls, but actually this music, the music business side of it is different, you know, feels different. And so, you know, we carried on with our band, we got different people switched in and out, but it still was really my focus. I still really, I don't know, I wanted to make up songs in my bedroom and practice them in someone's living room or a church hall, and then just play them in front of people. And it was the biggest buzz. And the way it felt playing to, you know, 70 people in a pub is exactly the way it feels now playing to, you know, 70,000 people at a festival, supporting someone, some giant, you know, it's the same feeling. And the feeling is kind of out of body, cosmic connectedness.
It's crazy that if your friend hadn't gotten pregnant, you could have had a completely different career track.
Yeah, I know.
You know?
I think about all the time, there's so many things that happen in your life and there's so much you can't control. But I think if you have a desire to do and to make, especially in music, you know, sort of find a way, like water kind of running down, finding its niche and its path. And, you know, I'm really grateful for the journey I've had in music, and really grateful for all the different experiences I've had in life, and how music has been a solace and a way of expressing myself, and, you know, a companion, kept me sane and grounded and all those things.
Well, I love that you're following your heart and you're following your muse, and we like following along to see how you're doing. So it's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Corinne Bailey Rae, the new album is called Black Rainbows, and we're live from Apogee. It's KCRW.